Hi, everyone. We're here today with a very special guest who's been a student at College of Thurman for a long time. I'm Dave Patterson, a librarian, and I've known Emily Wong in the library for many years. And this is Emily. Hi, Emily. Thanks for doing this today.
Thank you for having me.
And Emily, even though I've known you for years, it wasn't until you came into the library a few days ago and handed me this book, I realized that you are connected to African American history in a very powerful way. Your grandfather was Howard Thurman, and Howard Thurman is a really important part of the civil rights movement and the whole 20th century. Can you tell us a little bit about who was Howard Thurman?
Well, Howard Thurman was a minister, and he, I think it was the YWCA, invited them to go to India to meet Gandhi. And while he was there, Gandhi recommended to him to a nonviolent approach to civil rights movement. And Howard met Martin Luther King, I believe it was in Boston, when he was dean of the chapel, and Martin Luther King was a student. Then he passed on what Gandhi said to Martin Luther King to promote nonviolence with his protest movement.
That's amazing. And we all know about Martin Luther King's commitment to nonviolence, but and many people know it comes from Mahatma Gandhi and his connection, but it sounds like your grandfather, Howard Thurman, was kind of the one who connected them.
Yes, he met him. He met Mahatma Gandhi. He went there and met him.
Now, you knew your grandfather very well because he lived until you were in your 20s. So let's ask first, what were your memories of your grandfather as a little girl?
He was a great storyteller. He used to tell me a lot of stories, including one where he grew up in Florida and he witnessed his father wrestling an alligator.
An alligator, wow.
And I think he talks about Florida in his autobiography. Because, well, when he was a child, he used to fish and sell fish. And he lived in the Everglades. It was very beautiful. And there was no African American high school where he lived. So his teacher tutored him, and he traveled to another town to go to high school. And then from high school, I think he went to Columbia, and he also went to Morehouse. And there's a really nice story about how he went to get the train and he didn't have any fare, and someone gave him his fare, and he was wearing shoes that were too big, that were stuffed with paper.
Wow. You said he loved trains.
Yes, he knew all the porters, and he would tell me, oh, I'm going on this train, and it's the last run of this particular train. And he traveled everywhere by train. And one time he sold some of my postcards on the train.
Wow.
I used to make postcards. I still do, actually.
And he sold them on the train.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, when you were a teenager, where he was pretty much, where were you geographically? Like your grandpa was where, and where were you?
I think they were in Boston at the time, and then they came to San Francisco.
Did you grow up here in the Bay Area?
I lived here until I was 5, and then I moved to Watsonville, and then I moved to New York until I was about 19, and then my father asked me to come back.
I see. And when you were out on the East Coast, were you closer geographically to...
They lived in Boston.
They lived in Boston, I see.
Yeah, we used to take the train and go visit them.
And tell us about that. What was that like?
Well, they lived in this beautiful brownstone house, and it was near the river, and there was this lake in a park that had swan boats that we used to take us to.
Wow. Boats shaped like swans.
Yeah, they were paddle boats. And one time we went to some event where there was an owl. I think it was by the park. There was an owl. And one time my grandmother took us swimming at the YWCA. They had wool bathing suits that you had to wear.
That doesn't sound comfortable. That's so funny. What was your grandfather like? I mean, as a grandpa, was he easy to talk to?
Yes, he was a great storyteller, and he loved to cook. He loved to cook fish. They lived in North Beach, and he would walk to Chinatown and buy fresh fish and cook it with cornbread.
Is that right?
But his sister made different cornbread than him. Yeah, his cornbread had no sugar, but her cornbread was sweet.
Ah.
And he would wrap the fish in newspaper.
Well, when you were a young woman in your 20s, I think you worked in the office of your grandfather?
Yes, he had an office in the basement of this apartment, which was on Stockton Street. I believe it was 2024 Stockton Street. And my brother is trying to get a plaque put on that building. He wanted to try to rename the Pfeiffer Alley to Howard Thurman Alley, but the residents objected.
Yeah.
So they're just going to try to get a plaque. And in that office, he would make cassette tapes of his sermons, and I would help in shipping them.
I see.
What my duty was.
Mm-hmm.
But since that time, the cassette tapes have been digitized, and now they're available through CDs or MP3 online. I think there's some websites that you can listen to them.
That's wonderful.
And the sermons are very popular. And my mother's sister wanted to have them digitized because she said that there are people in prison who wanted to listen to the tape.
Wow.
And I don't know why they couldn't bring cassettes. I'm not sure why, but
Yeah.
That was a project that took a really long time to implement, but finally it was implemented.
Wonderful. Well, I think your grandfather would be so happy to know that prisoners were listening to his sermons, just based on the kind of person he was. So, Emily, tell us about the church in San Francisco that's still going, and you say you're invited there every year. This was a very special church. Can you explain to the audience? I think it's called the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples. And tell us how this church started and how your grandfather was involved.
Well, Dr. Fisk, who co-founded the church with Howard, invited him when he was in Boston to come here and help him found this church. And it was supposed to be a multicultural, multi-ethnic, interfaith church. That's what he wanted to create.
Wonderful. And what are your memories of it as a kid or as a teenager or a young person?
Well, sometimes I would go, and my grandfather had a very distinctive, beautiful voice. And my grandmother told me that he learned how to speak when he was at Columbia. He took the Shakespeare class, and that's how he learned how to speak. Wow. And I didn't really understand what he was talking about, but he had a beautiful voice.
Wow. You can hear his voice in that documentary we were talking about. He does have a beautiful voice. Now, we should talk about your grandmother, too, because when you handed me this book, I don't know if we can see it on the camera. It's called Pioneers Pioneers of Negro Origins in California. This was actually written by your grandmother, Sue Bailey Thurman, Howard's wife. She was also a very extraordinary woman. Can you tell us about her?
Well, I think she published several works, and this particular book originally appeared in, it was this African-American newspaper out of Oakland.
Uh-huh.
That's where it originally appeared. And
section by section, and then she combined it into a book.
Yes, and one of her sources was this woman who interviewed recently freed slaves coming to California. The people don't realize that there was immigration to California during that time. And so this woman interviewed slaves on the train, newly freed slaves, and 2 articles appeared in that East Bay Oakland African-American newspaper. And she tried to get published, but she wasn't able to at the time.
That's good.
And there is something about her on a KPFA radio show called East Bay Yesterday. It's every week, and it's in archives, but I can't remember which episode it was.
Wonderful. Well, I'll find it, and we'll link it up with the resources. Tell us about your memories of Sue Bailey Thurman.
Well, she loved to cook. She loved to give parties during holidays. She loved to make jambalaya. That was her favorite dish to make. And she liked to make a bundt cake.
A bundt cake.
And she had like maybe over 100 cookbooks. And also she collected glassware and china.
You said that when she went with her husband to India to meet Mahatma Gandhi, they also went to Japan.
Oh yes, she had a display of dolls, including a Japanese doll. And later I studied ikebane, which is Japanese flower arrangement, and she told me some things about the principles of flower arranging.
Wonderful. And let's see now. Your mother was Olive. Yeah. Olive, who was, tell us about your mother.
Well, my parents met at Fellowship Church because my mother went to, she studied theater arts in college, and she came back from college and she wanted to direct a play at Fellowship Church. And she asked the parishioners if they had anybody that would be interested in performing in her play. And so my father's sister, who was a member of the church, apparently some of the founding members were Chinese.
Uh-huh.
And so my aunt brought my father to be in her play. And that's how they met.
Wow.
And later he went on to have quite a bit later, he went on to have a career at movies.
Yeah, and you were telling me some of the movies he was in.
Yeah.
Can you name some of them? I've forgotten them.
Eat a Bowl of Tea, Golden Child, Big Trouble in Little China.
Okay.
There are others too. I can't.
Right, yeah. And your mother, she became a librarian.
Oh yes. Well, after my parents got divorced, we lived in Berkeley, moved to Berkeley, and she went to the Berkeley school there, the master program, and then she wanted to. The reason why she did that because she wanted to work in the New York City Library, public library, which eventually she did.
And she also worked at Lincoln Center in New York?
Yeah, that was the last branch that she worked in. Was the I think it's called the Performance Library,
Wow.
and it's at Lincoln Center.
Wow, amazing.
And she also worked at City College Library.
Right. And even here in Marin.
Yeah, she was like a on-call substitute for various branches, including Nevada and Fairfax.
I love it. Well, thank you, Emily. Before we say goodbye, if there's one last thing you could tell us about why you want students and faculty at College of Marin to know about your grandfather or your grandmother. Tell us, what was it about their legacy that you'd like students to know? What do you think is the most important message of their lives?
Well, I think the fact that they met Gandhi and we encouraged the civil rights movement to be nonviolent, and also they were very interested in integration and interfaith.
Yeah, yeah. What a legacy. And thank you so much for sharing your memories with us today.
Thank you.